My name is Karlyn Semlow, and I'm a supporter of the Bravo Programs of America. I'm going to start my PowerPoint, share that with you. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. As I said, my name is Karlyn, and I have been in the human resources profession for about 27 years now, and I have the opportunity today to talk to you about interviewing. And as we speak here in July of 2025, it is an extremely tight labor market in the state of Michigan. We are actually ranked number 2 for the highest unemployment rates in the country. That was as of last week. I believe it hasn't changed. And so what that means is that when you're interviewing, you really need to find a way to set yourself apart from the other applicants who are interviewing. Setting yourself apart, meaning making yourself more memorable to the interview team. And so I'm a pretty practical person. And so today I want to share with you just some things from a practical perspective that might help you to do that and to set yourself apart. So we're going to go get started. Really got us breaking it down into a couple categories today. I'm going to talk about things to do before your interview so that you can prepare for your interview. I'm going to talk about the interview day specifically, just some tips on what to do at the end of the interview, and then just an encouragement after to get you off on the right foot. So let's go ahead and get started. So the pre-interview. So at this point, you've done all the work to create your resume and you've applied for jobs and you've been selected for an interview. And so a couple of things I want to talk about that'll help to set you apart is when you're preparing for your interview, I want you to do some research. When I say that, I'm saying research the company, research what their mission is, what their purpose is, what types of products that they produce, anything that you can do to get more knowledgeable about that company. Don't be surprised if one of the first interview questions you're asked is what do you know about us? So you want to be prepared to be able to respond to that question. The next thing I want to recommend is to read. So you likely applied for that job, maybe through a job posting, an advertisement, a job description. Hopefully you kept that. And so what I would say is you want to go back and you want to read that job posting. You want to read that job description so that you have a better understanding of what the position is that you will be interviewing for, to be better prepared to respond to those questions. And that helps with my next point, which is preparing. And in order to be prepared, you need to prepare for the unknowns. And so one of the things that I think is really important to do to help prepare for the unknowns is to start thinking about maybe some of the common questions that interviewers ask, things about teamwork or leadership or directly related job experience, communication skills. What do you do in the situation when you are working with a difficult coworker or a customer? Start thinking of how you might answer those questions to help you be more prepared. A lot of times, if we think those through in our brains, that when we're actually asked those questions, we don't panic. It's much more natural for us to respond to those types of questions. If you don't have those types of experiences, what I'd recommend for you is to dig deep. And what I mean by that is you may have that experience, but it's not in an employment related setting at this point. You may have not had the opportunity to have jobs that have provided you that opportunity. So maybe you had it, this experience, maybe you had a leadership role and it was during a school project, a significant school project, or maybe you do some volunteer work and you're considered a leader or at your volunteer job, or you're with the student organization or the captain of a sports team in college or in high school. If you don't have the directly related employment experience, it's okay to use experience that you had somewhere else in your lifetime. It's better to be able to use those as examples than to say that you don't have that experience. And so sometimes we aren't prepared to answer those types of questions with that experience. So helping to prepare is a good way to just be more ready for those interview questions when they come up. The next thing I want to talk about is practicing. So you've often heard that when we practice things, we should be doing that out loud. It helps us to be more prepared for the situation, the speech, or whatever moment we're given that we're speaking out loud. That applies here too. So what I would say to you is to practice the interview and find a friend, somebody who will be honest with you, and do a role play situation. Doing a practice interview with some other person will give you good experience to get some of those anxious moments out. You can even come up with the questions yourself that you think would be things you might be asked in that interview. And then you can go ahead and give those to that person and ask for some honest feedback. And you may need to practice a couple times, but practicing you will find will make you more prepared for the interview, which then in turn actually makes you feel and sound more confident. And that is one of the things that's going to set you apart in this job market is not only just your experience and your education, but just the confidence that you show in the work that you're looking to do. And then the last thing I want to talk about with the pre-interview is paperwork. And that's just having anything that they've asked you to bring to the interview with you. So you may need to reread your invitation to interview if they've sent you something, or maybe your notes when you got the call to interview. These things could likely be something like maybe your diploma, your transcripts, maybe you've been asked to provide a work-related example that you could bring to the interview, or even an example of a writing sample that you've done. So if you've been asked to bring something, pull it together, make sure that you are putting forth your best first impression, which is being prepared for the interview when you show up. So those are the things I want to talk about to get ready for the interview. They will pay off, I assure you of that. And so the next thing I want to talk about today is just some of the things to remember on interview day. I've got 9 points that I want to make. There's obviously more, but these are the things, again, that are the practical things that I want to make sure you're aware of so that you apply them. Hopefully give you the best chance at this job. So the first one is don't ghost. It is happening all over the place anymore. Life happens. There's things that come up. People can't make interviews for one reason or another, and people change their minds or they get other job offers. All understandable. Ghosting is not acceptable. So ghosting, I'm sure you do know this, but if you don't, ghosting is not calling, not showing up. So you never know when you may be wanting to knock on that door again. So don't put yourself in that position to not let that door be opened again because you ghosted at some point. The next item I have is first impressions really do matter. So as an interviewer, we often have a decision made up of whether an applicant is a good fit for us within the first 10 minutes of the interview. And so first impressions really matter, which kind of goes to my positions here for number 3 and number 4. Number 3, dress to impress. So you at this point, you're not necessarily, I don't think anybody's expecting you to show up in a suit necessarily, but you do want to make sure that you are putting forth a good impression. So that means that you are, dressed professionally. If possible, try to do a little bit of background on this company and find out maybe a little bit about their culture and even how they dress, and try to dress maybe a step above what they do in their everyday. So if maybe their everyday is jeans and a polo, maybe on that day you're wearing slacks and a button down. You want to actually be more prepared, better dressed than less in an interview. You don't want to be the person that walks in and you are completely underdressed for the situation. Again, that goes to making the first impression. The next thing I want to talk about is don't underestimate the power of a handshake. This may seem a little old-fashioned, but it's still, for many of us, very important. And so the power of a handshake means coming in. Again, this is going to display how confident you are, which will portray in your interview. So be the first one to put your hand out to do a handshake. A firm handshake, looking somebody in the eyes, introducing yourself. Hello, I'm Karlyn. Nice to meet you. Thank you for having me in today. Start your interviews off by making sure you greet everybody as you enter the room or as they enter the room, whatever that situation may be. again, doing your first impression within that first minute of your interview. As the interview is getting started, make sure you understand the questions that are being asked from you. It's okay to pause to gather your thoughts if you need to, and it's okay to ask for clarification on something. It actually shows us that you have more confidence to do that as well, and that you are, looking for clarifying questions than just answering something off the wall. Then we think that you don't either understand or that you didn't have enough confidence to ask for that clarification. So pause if you need to. And actually, if for some reason you are unable to answer that question, it's quite okay as well to ask if you can come back to it. And so pause for a second, can't come up with an answer. I would recommend you even take a piece of paper and a pen into your interview with you. And so if you can't answer a question, ask if it's okay for you to come back to that question and quickly write down a note to yourself, one of what the question was, and secondly, a note will help you remind you at the end of your interview that you said you were going to go back and do something, and we want to make sure you follow through with that. With that same sense, we want to make sure that you're honest during your interviews. And so sometimes, we get a little nervous about our experience, but we don't want to stretch the truth in an interview, mostly because that stuff's verifiable likely. If you in two ways I'm thinking of specifically. One is talking about maybe a company that maybe you didn't really have the right job title. Maybe you inflated a job title or you inflated how long you worked there. All of those things are verifiable. But also in your experience specifically, if you're not honest about your experience and you exaggerate it, and then when you get the job and you are, asked to do it something at that level and you don't know how to, it's going to be very obvious that you weren't honest and in your interview, and you really don't want to start off on that foot. Number 7 is read body language and social cues. And so as an interviewer, our bodies give off social cues to you as to how you're doing most likely. So I want you to be aware that maybe if you're talking too much, you will start seeing your interviewers looking elsewhere, trying to show you that you are going on a little bit longer. If you're not being clear, you may have some confused looks on your interviewers' faces. Or if you're just not giving enough, you may see that they're kind of giving you that cue, like, is there more to give? So you definitely, for your own well-being, you want to read that body language. So pay attention when you have your interview as to how long that interview is going to be scheduled. And if it's scheduled for 30 minutes, make sure that you stay within that time frame. Unless they've extended it beyond that, make sure that you're within that time frame, because often we schedule interviews back to back. And so when you go on and on and on and we can't get you to stop, you've put back the entire day for us. And it's very difficult for us to really be able to evaluate your work experience if you just keep repeating the same thing over and over. So again, read the body language and the social to get those social cues. And then our next one is one that hopefully you all already know, but I wanted to take a moment to remind you. Never, ever talk poorly about another employer or another management team. It's just not appropriate in an interview. You may find that you do that and you've caused concern for that next employer to say whether or not that is something that you'll feel about them, that you'll talk bad about them to someone else or things of that like. And so, yes, you may have worked for an awful employer. You may have had a terrible manager. But it's really not the appropriate place to be airing that type of information. You can talk about a situation and maybe what you did in a circumstance to approach, maybe you're asked a question about how did you deal with a difficult manager, and you can give an example of something specific that you had done. Maybe you rose up to the challenge and you felt that you were disrespected in a situation, you weren't heard by your manager, so that you had a difficult conversation with that manager afterwards and talked about it. Those types of examples are perfectly fine and honorable to have, but it's just bad mouthing a past employer that's really unacceptable to do. And then the last thing is something I feel very strongly about. And that is at the end of your interview, you should be asking questions of the interviewers. Not only when you are interviewing for position, not only do they pick you for the position, but you're picking them as well. You know, you need to enjoy where you work. Unfortunately, we all have to work, it's part of life. And so, but we can work in places that we love to work. We can work in a place. I've been with my employer for 25 years, and I say that I can't believe after 25 years, I still love what I do and I'm still in the same place, but it's because I believe in what we do. And so ask those questions because you want to make sure that you're accepting a job that you're going to be proud of and that really does fit your long-term goals. So ask those questions at the end of the interview. Be prepared to ask them. You're often going to be asked if you have any questions at the end of your interview. And so we're wrapping up the interview. And then afterwards, there are just some pretty simple things that you should be doing. One is send a thank you. This should be something that's pretty timely and pretty personal. Again, you may be thinking I'm a little old fashioned, and I might be, but again, I am looking at things that are going to set you apart when you're interviewing, make you memorable. And so, not many people send thank yous after. And so, this will help with that. So, that's thing you can just say, thank you so much for the time. Thank you for granting me the interview. I enjoyed the time that I got to learn about the company, and I am very interested in such and such position. Just something personal to the interviewers. The next thing I'd like you to do is to take some time to review your interview performance. And so this is actually a really difficult thing to do because it's hard for us to think about the things that maybe we didn't do so well, but it's something that's really important to do in order to continue to just grow. And so when you were interviewing afterwards, think about it. Did you have a question that was asked of you that was really difficult for you to answer? Would you maybe have answered it differently? Did you not have an answer for the question? And those are the types of things that you want to sit back, think about how could I have answered that differently? What would I do next time? Where can I come up with an answer for this if I'm asked again? And those types of things, again, they help us to be better because they are helping us to prepare and to be more prepared for that next interview. And if nothing else, it's practice and growth. And so whether you, when you interview, and even if you don't get that position, consider it practice and it'll prepare you for the next interview that you are granted as well. So no interview is a lost cause. Keep that in mind. And then also follow up. So one of the things that I wanted to mention is that it's okay for you to ask at the end of your interview some questions about when do you expect to make this hire? Is there when do you expect to make the hire? And so if you haven't heard anything, it's quite okay for you to follow up after about a week, maybe of not hearing the deadline that they gave you, not hearing anything. Send a message and just ask if there's let them know you're still interested. Is there anything else that you can do or to assist them in making that decision? And so the last thing I want to leave you with today is just this quote that I found that I think says it all very well from Oscar Wilde. It says, "Be yourself. Everyone else is already taken." And so again, this really goes to being genuine in your interview, talking about who you really are, where you want to be, where you want to grow to, and setting that good impression with everybody and finding the right job that's a good job and a good fit for you, because there's that job out there. And don't settle. Do something that really is something that has your heart, so it can be something you can make a career out of. So thanks for spending time with me today, and my contact information is available on this webpage, and feel free to call me if you have any questions or if you need someone to practice with. I'd be happy to help. Thank you.